In the late 1940s, George Orwell lived far from cities, on a remote Scottish island, because his health failed and his strength ran low. He still worked. He needed to put recent history into words. He had watched Europe change under pressure. War had ended, but fear stayed. Governments and movements had bent facts, repeated slogans, demanded loyalty. Propaganda did not just persuade people, it trained them. Orwell began drafting a new novel with that lesson in mind. He treated exhaustion like a deadline. If fear and misinformation could reshape whole countries, then a story could show the end point. Orwell stopped treating his book as a simple warning and made a sharper choice. He gathered what he had watched across Europe: spying, banned ideas, staged devotion, and decided to fuse them into one system. Instead of listing separate abuses, he built a single country where every method supported the next. Surveillance fed fear. Fear demanded obedience. Obedience invited more control. In his draft, the trap tightened by design. He needed a name that felt ordinary enough to be believable, yet closed enough to feel inescapable. Oceania became that container, a state that swallowed private life and made loyalty not a choice but a daily test. Orwell pushed past the obvious tools of control and reached for something deeper. He sketched a new language called Newspeak, built to cut choices down. Fewer words meant fewer ideas people could even name. In his pages, language stopped being a way to express life and became a cage that set limits. Words for rebellion, doubt, or moral anger got trimmed away. The range of possible thoughts narrowed with them. Then he added the harshest consequence, thought crime. It punished not actions, but private belief itself. With Newspeak tightening every year, even imagining a forbidden idea became harder until the mind policed itself. Orwell finally finished the manuscript, pushing through the last stretch until it became a complete warning, not just an idea. Then it reached the public. In 1949, the novel appeared in print. Readers met a simple, terrifying symbol: Big Brother. It was not a distant ruler you never saw. It felt like a presence that watched, judged, and demanded obedience, even when nobody spoke. That shift mattered. The threat no longer stayed in parliaments or secret police offices. It moved into ordinary life, into private moments. Constant monitoring stopped sounding abstract and started feeling personal. Once the Cold War hardened, the novel stopped being just a warning and started becoming a tool. In the West, officials waved it as proof that communist systems led to control and fear. Across the divide, the same pages looked dangerous for different reasons. Some communist governments treated the book as an attack that could spread doubt. At the same time, critics argued over what it targeted. Schools and libraries became battlegrounds. Some educators assigned it as civic education. Others pushed to remove it as too bleak or too political. Either way, the controversy amplified its power. The argument over the book did not stay on shelves. A new word spread into headlines, classrooms, and everyday talk: Orwellian. People used it when something felt like the novel made real. It worked because it named several fears at once. Orwellian meant censorship that erased facts, doublespeak that made lies sound normal, and public language that bent until ordinary people repeated it. Soon it became a shortcut for intimidation too. When a government threatened critics, monitored citizens, or punished the wrong opinion, the label appeared. One adjective turned confusion into recognition fast. By the late 20th century, surveillance stopped feeling like a distant nightmare and started looking like normal infrastructure. Cameras spread through streets and shops. Phones and databases quietly collected details. Monitoring became routine, and it rarely announced itself. At first, it sounded practical. Prevent crime, protect borders, run services faster, but the trade-off appeared later. The same systems tracked movement, spending, and contacts. Power shifted toward institutions that stored the records and decided who got watched. That shift changed how people read the novel. The telescreen stopped meaning only a dictator's tool. It became a warning about devices and organizations that blended convenience with control. Big Brother looked less like one man and more like a system. The internet age changed the problem. People no longer struggled to find information, they struggled to know what to trust. False stories traveled fast, repeated by strangers, then echoed by friends until they felt like facts. Behind the scenes, algorithms sorted attention like a currency. They pushed whatever kept people watching: fear, outrage, certainty. The result felt personal, but it scaled endlessly, feeding each person a different version of reality. That was why readers returned to the novel with new urgency. It offered a simple map of a complex trap. When truth got manufactured, competing truths got sold. Confusion did not happen by accident, it got produced. As politics hardened into teams, people stopped arguing to convince and started arguing to win. Every issue turned into an identity test. The novel's warning stopped feeling distant. It started sounding familiar. Words got repurposed until they meant their opposite, and the same event produced two rival versions of reality. People repeated both, depending on the crowd. That was doublethink in plain sight. This time, it did not require secret police or a single dictator to work. It worked through social pressure, selective outrage, and constant repetition. The consequence stayed the same. Confusion became control. Decades later, the book no longer stayed on a shelf. People used it as a quick test for power. Who watched, who recorded, who punished. The warning turned into a common reference everywhere. The idea of surveillance shifted from a distant fear to a daily question. Cameras multiplied. Data trails grew, and institutions tracked behavior. Each new tool made the novel feel less like fiction and more like a manual. Propaganda and language control followed the same path. Public words got bent, definitions got swapped, and repetition replaced proof. The contrast stayed stark. One sick writer had worked alone, yet millions used his lens.